Hi, I'm AJ Boner, and I'm really pleased that you've gotten involved with AJ Reveals the Truth About Golf by being involved in these tapes. I'd like to give you an idea of the structure that we use to put these tapes together. Number one, they're designed to change the way you think about golf. And if you change the way you think about it, it's going to change the way you play forever. Over the years, it's been clear to me that there are four basic notions that have to be applied or have to be looked at in order to play golf well. Number one, you have to know which part of the ball to attack. The second thing you have to understand as a player is how the tool, the golf club that you're using, is designed to be used. The third thing you have to know is how the club face of that tool actually sits in the palm of your hand. After that, you have to understand that you hit the ball with a golf club, not with a golf swing. So use these tapes in the sequence they were designed. And that is, number one, the search for the truth. Number two, the discovery of the truth. And number three, the application of the truth. Don't jump ahead. Enjoy yourself. Take your time and go through each one of them completely and have a great time playing golf. And I'll see you again at the end of tape 3. Now, let me ask you guys something. Has it ever seemed to you like golf is this sort of exquisite card trick that some people clearly know how to do, but they just won't tell you how to do the trick? I mean, you know you're as capable as they are. You watch them hit the shots and you go, they know something. I don't know what it is, but they know something. And you go, every other game I ever played, I could beat him. I could beat him every day. He wouldn't have, and look at him hit those shots. He knows something. I don't know what it is, but he won't share it with you, right? It's rather like card tricks, you know. When you have a deck of cards, and I'm going to show you here. I got a deck of cards instead of bicycles, and they're mixed up. And one of the things that you can do with cards, obviously, is shuffle. And there are several ways to shuffle. The familiar ones are what we call the riffle shuffle, where you riffle shuffle them like that. Another one is the overhand shuffle, where you do this. So they're pretty mixed up now. And then the third one is one that most of you guys don't really know anything about. It's called the drunk shuffle, okay? Okay, you know about it. Okay. But it goes this way. You deal them out a little bit this way, and then you turn them over and you do this. And it ends up being rather messy. And then you finally you just mess them up as badly as you can, and you end up with a deck of cards that has some cards that are, front to back? And then you have some that are back to front. And you have some, if I can find one, that are back to back. So I have a messy deck. Just like that, though, it would be a really good trick if they were all face down again right now. Because you watched everything, didn't you? You saw the whole thing, that all the cards were face down. But it would be an even better trick if all the cards were face down except for 4 cards in the middle of the deck face up, and they were 4 aces. Now that would be a good trick. So let's see how we did. Well, I think we've done it, folks. We have done it. Yeah. It's a good trick, no? I'll show you how to do it later. Learning how to do card tricks is a lot like what people have done to themselves when they learn to play golf. There's misdirection. You pay attention to the wrong things. You're not aware of things that are going on that are there, but no one really told you about them. And what we're going to do today is talk about how the things that are missing in information are all you really need, and how to get rid of a lot of crud that's going on in your head about your golf game. And we're going to have a good time doing it. Well, I want to thank everybody. Everybody that's here is, I know, interested in golf. No, more than interested. Yeah, you're really probably just a little nuts about it, but so am I. And over the years, I've been at this a long time. I had... Next year will be my 50th year playing. We're in a place where golf has been just the most amazing thing for me, and I enjoy being in a position to be able to share some of it. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some things about getting control over the ball. That's at the bottom line. I think if everybody had the ability to write down the answer to this question, what is it that you want most in golf? It's not a score. It isn't even a kind of a distance thing, although I don't know anybody that doesn't want to hit it farther. But I think what everybody really wants is a sense of control over the ball. I mean, that's it. If I can walk off the golf course, even if I didn't make every putt, even if I didn't chip it close and save par, if I felt like I had a sense of control over the ball, get off, go have a few pops with your friends and say, you know, it was a pretty good day today. How'd you play? Not bad. Didn't score like I wanted to, but not bad. So it's not about shooting 75 or 65. That's if you're going to make a living, it is. But as a recreational golfer, I think it's about having control over the ball, that sense of, you know, when I walk out here today, I know how to make the ball do what I want it to do. And I think everybody here has probably played hockey, baseball, soccer, cricket, baseball, football, basketball, all of those things. Those games you picked up and you learned. Example, how many of you here have played ping pong? Give me a show. Okay, everybody. Pretty good? Pretty good ping pong players? Pretty good? Of course you are. I mean, look how many people have grown up in ping pong and you get pretty good at it. And if you haven't played for 15 years, you could take the ping pong paddle, go play. In 5 minutes, you'd be, okay, here we are. I remember. Here we go. I got it back on the table, hitting all those shots. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to poll the place here. Who is your ping pong pro? Huh, no ping pong pro, right? Well, how do you learn a game where the ball's moving, geez, at 50, 60 miles an hour, depending on who you play with, and the person on the other side of the table is trying to get you out of position so that when you go like this to get that next shot, they fool you and you go, oh, geez, and you go like that and you knock it and you hit a winner. Nice shot, thank you. How do you learn that stuff? Nobody was there to teach it. Now we have a game, golf, where the ball's just sitting still. Just sitting still. And you're allowed to walk up to it so you're the same distance from it every time. Nobody getting you out of position. And no one's even allowed to talk to you while you're doing it. Are you gonna, excuse me, I'm trying to hit over here, okay? Jeez, rude people. And it's a ball sitting still. And as an athlete, somehow that's the hardest game in the world. Now, let me again, another poll. Has not, in your mind, and the people that you talk to, the best athletes you know, including yourselves, hasn't golf been the hardest game you've all had to learn as a game? Something's wrong with that. Okay, that's the problem. There's something basically wrong with that. And what we're going to go over today is to find out how we can go back to getting control over the ball like you do with a ping pong paddle, or you do with a tennis racket, or you do with a hockey stick on the puck. That you learn from the time when you put on skates and go stick handle and you get good and you do things and you shoot it and you play around and you play in the sand lots where you are, you play on the street where you played stick ball, or it doesn't matter what the process was or what the game was. The process really was the same. Stick, ball, hand-eye coordination. So what we're going to talk about today, in order to get control over the ball, we're going to break this down into really 4 things. Number 1, you have to know which part of the ball to hit, and you have to know how the ball flies. Because if you don't know how the ball flies, how are you going to make it fly where you want it to go? Let's see, here's an airplane. You can get in there, and I can just kind of point it there and have it go. Yeah, but how does it fly? What does it do? How do I get... Well, if you just point it there and shove this thing forward and the engine goes rev, you'll probably be okay. Sorry. So you need to know how the ball flies. You need to know that first. The next thing you need to know is you need to know how the tool, the golf club, is designed to be used. Because Lord knows it is not obvious. And maybe the most difficult thing about golf is that the golf club looks very different from the way it's supposed to be used. Your intuition will tell you one thing and it'll be wrong. And we know that common sense can be very misleading in this life. And that the reality of things in terms of science and technology and physics can actually be or seem unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a very good example. 450 years ago, there was a guy named Nicholas Copernicus. He was the only person on the planet that believed that the sun was the center of our solar system. That made it a solar system, you see. Before, it was a geocentric thing. It was the Earth was the center of the universe. instead of the heliocentric thing, you see. So now we have this idea that here we've got these spheres surrounding the Earth. And he said, you know what would happen if the sun was in the center and the Earth went around? Everything seems to work better in terms of observations about what happens in the heavens when I look up there. Well, of course, he was the only one on the planet that thought that the sun was the center of the solar system. So he was an idiot. Because everybody else went, guy's got no common sense. Hey, think about it. He's got his nose in a book all day. He's terrible. I mean, he's just, look, the man's an idiot. He has no common sense. Get him down here and I'll show him some common sense. Let's do this. Get him down here and what we're going to do is I'm going to have him sit in a chair just like this. We're going to sit, Nick, you sit there, I'm going to sit here. We're not going to move. We're not moving. This is very early in the morning, Nick. Where's the sun? Well, it's right over there. I said, okay. Now we're going to sit here all day. Halfway through the day, he said to Nick, where's the sun? Well, it's right up there. Where was it when we first started? It was over there. Did you move? I didn't move. Did you move? I didn't move. The tree didn't move over there. Your chair didn't move. You're an idiot. So we know now, every school child knows that he wasn't an idiot. And even though our common sense kind of idea about how we view the world is a little beaten up by this, the fact is, we know for a fact that it is in the center of the center of our solar system, and we get this Earth going around. Because it rotates on its own axis, the Earth, we see the sun as though it moves across the sky. The fact of the matter is, here's one of those scientific things that seems impossible. Where we're sitting right now, every second we move 1/4 mile, just in the rotation of the Earth. That doesn't include how we're hurtling around the orbit. This is just the rotation. 1001, we just moved 1/4 mile. Now who's going to believe that? Nobody's going to believe that. But you see, it's your perspective on it that changes everything. And as soon as you change the perspective, all of a sudden things get very clear. So here was Copernicus 450 years ago. 100 years later, Galileo Galilei invents the telescope. He looks into the heavens. He starts charting the planets. And he figures out that the only thing that makes any sense from his calculations are if Copernicus was right. 100 years went by. The guy had the right idea. 100 years. And they arrested Galileo for saying that, so we don't tolerate new ideas well, we just don't. But my point isn't that this is as profound as anything like that. My point is simply that if you see it from the right perspective, you will be able to understand it better. And sometimes your common sense will be misleading. And I promise you that when you first look at a golf club, your common sense or your intuitive notion about the way that tool is made, you're going to make the wrong decision. I'm sorry, but that's what's going to happen. Just because. And my wife for years has said, how do you know what people are thinking? I said, well, I've done it for all these years. And people just come to the wrong conclusion about the club. So the second part of what we're talking about is how the tool is designed to be used. And if you understand that, and you understand which part of the ball to attack, you can see you're very much on your way to being your own best teacher now. You can teach yourself to play this game the way you taught yourself to play ping pong and tennis and baseball and hockey and all those things. Sure, you had coaches, but you didn't have people teaching you your ping pong swing, did you? Nobody. So you learned how to use the paddle and the racket and so on. Now the third thing we're going to talk about is how the tool or the face of the golf club is oriented in your hand, because that is really at the heart of being able to make the tool do your bidding. Your hands are the most brilliant thing on your body, believe it or not. And if you're dominantly one-sided, if you have one hand that's very dominant, about 85% of the huge portion of your brain that's allocated to your hands is allocated to that. That's what makes it the dominant hand. So these are the smartest things on your body. As a matter of fact, your brain allocations, and this isn't just for golf, this is how human beings, and all you have to do is hit the internet a little bit and find out some of these through resources that are available to you. You don't ever ask any of the doctors that you know how the brain's allocated to the human body. We know where speech is, because when someone has a stroke in that part of the brain, speech is damaged. We know where these things live in the brain, and we know where the motor skills come from, and we know where they're located in the brain. What we also know is that about 42% of your brain's allocated to your fine motor skills here, the hands. 25% of your brain's allocated to the visual cortex, which is vision. And so 67%, 2/3 of your brain is allocated to your hand-eye function. That's a huge RAM disk in there, isn't it? I mean, that's enormous from all that's in the computer. So you have this brilliant combination that through all these millennia of evolution has turned out to be the successful thing that we've got, and it allows us to do things and feed ourselves, and it allows us to make anything, and it allows us to plant and to harvest and to grind the stuff and eat it and feed ourselves and hunt to skin him and make clothes and do the stuff that allows us to survive. So here's this brilliant part of our brain allocated to these two functions. It's enough. It's plenty. You don't need any more. And just recently found some very interesting data about the motor functions in the body and the sensory functions in the body send messages at a much higher rate than, say, pain messages are sent or cognitive messages from your brain, the ability to think. Example, pain, cognitive messages are sent at about 3 to 4 meters per second throughout the nervous system. But the motor, the proprioceptive messages, get sent 70 to 100 meters per second. That's how good this stuff is, you see? And it's too fast for you to think about it. How many of you ever hit a shot and went, wow, what did I just do? I got to repeat that. And so then you go to that cognitive part of your brain that can't function that fast and try to run it with that part of your brain. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's too slow. It's like having two computers, one that runs on gigahertz clock speed, billions of hertz cycles per second. And then you have one that's kilohertz, which is thousands of cycles per. That's your thinking part. I'm sorry, but it is. I'd like for it to be faster, but it ain't. Then we have this gigahertz clock speed computer running all the programs. It's running all these programs that need the high-speed computer. You got to have the high-speed computer. And then what we try to do is we try to filter those programs through that kilohertz clock speed computer and slow it down. And it doesn't work. I don't know why. The more I try to command it, the less it works. And as you played all those other sports that you played, I know Daryl's a hockey player, and you jump up and take your turn on the ice. It's for your line to get out there, and you're in the flow. You have to get in the flow now. You don't have time to do that on the soccer field. You know, you're in the flow now. So understanding that in all the other athletics that you play as a tennis pro, when you hit the ball and you do things, and everything you've ever done, you get into the flow instantly, and you can't have time to think. The illusion in golf is that because the ball sits still, there's time. All those other sports, the ball or the puck is moving. So you don't perceive that there's time, you just have to go react and do it. And you allow those motor programs to run things. So you got to see that it's the same in golf. And people keep talking about it needs to be more reactive. Well, how do you do that? Well, you do it the same way you do all those other sports. That's how you do it. And here's what we're going to talk about. We know now that we're going to talk about the ball and how to hit it, which part of the ball to attack and how it flies, how the golf club is designed to be used, how the face of the club sits in your hands. Your hand can do 6 things. It can drop down, raise up, do this, do that. This is ulnar deviation, radial deviation, palmar flexion, dorsiflexion, pronation, and supination. Your hand can do 6 things. You don't need to know those names. I do, because I have to explain it. But you don't need to know those. You can call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't care. The point is, they do certain things, and each thing that they do has a name. And so because it has a name, we can clearly define what it is that we're going to do with it. So now we have how the club face sits in your hand. So if you know how the club face sits in your hand, and you know which of those motions your hand can do makes the club operate correctly, then you can do it. And again, if you know which part of the ball to hit, you know how the tool's designed, and you know how the tool sits in your hand, you can teach yourself to play. Right? At the same way you did with the ping pong paddle. There's our ping pong paddle. Now, the ping pong paddle is the palm of your hand when you play. It just sits to the side of your hand, that's all. It's right here, but it's the palm of your hand when you play, or it's the back of your hand when you hit the backhand. But it is your hand. There's your palm right there. So it's easy for you to sense in your dominant hand that has all the smarts where this thing is in space. And then we're going to use something called the anticipated moment of impact so you can learn how to get timing, which is what allows you to have athletic timing in sports. There's a lot said about golf that somehow we don't want timing involved in this. Ooh, bad stuff. There's no timing, there's just mechanics. Well, I got news for you. There's timing in every other sport you ever played, and you learn those rather easily. And if you put timing into golf, you're going to find that it's easy to learn that too. And the timing comes from the anticipated moment of impact, because that That's an event in time and space where when you hit the ping pong ball with the paddle, you anticipate that moment of impact so that you can figure out when to put the top spin on. Otherwise, how do you know when to put the top spin on? It's all connected to that anticipated moment of impact. That's what's going to give you the sense with a golf club that when you hit the ball at a certain place in time, anticipate it, and you get a sense of where the face is in your hand, you can be able to use the golf club and have control over the ball. And that's, again, at the very beginning, what we talked about. Control the ball. That's what this is all about. The fourth and final piece of all this, and this is the thread that runs throughout all of this, is that you have to hit the ball with the golf club, not a golf swing. So that thread sort of winds in and out of those three concepts: how the ball has to be hit and how it flies, how the tool's designed, and finally how it sits in your hand. And if you understand those three things, and you understand that your job is to hit the ball with the golf club, not a golf swing, we can do that. So in using that concept, what I want to do is sort of give you two models to sort of contrast here. The one has been around for about 80 years in a big way. It's not as old as golf. It's a fairly new paradigm that started about the 1920s when we started to take a look in film of Bob Jones and the great stuff that he did. And it's sort of ironic because Bob Jones said that he had never ever tried to make a golf swing or tried to emulate someone's golf swing. What he did do was he observed how people used the club against the ball, and then he would try to do the same thing with his club to see if he got the same result. He was a tool user. He was a club user. He hit the ball with the club, not the swing, in fact. But then, of course, when you make the movies, you have to talk about some swing technique, and people took off from there and just sort of started studying, thinking the answer lies there. And here's why. The model that was used for all those 80 years now up to today was, there's a golf swing. If I learn to make it perfectly, I'll hit perfect shots. There's a golf swing. If I learn to make it perfectly, I'll hit perfect shots. Now, there's a problem with that. And the problem is, it's logical, but it isn't true. Okay? That's the problem. And the reason it's not true is because the premise isn't true. There ain't no golf swing. Whose would it be? Tiger Woods? Davis Love? Freddie Couples? Whose would it be? Jim Furyk? Nota Bigay? Whose would it be? You take your pick. It doesn't matter. They're all different. Lee Trevino? There's a classic. Great player. Great tool user. Great craftsman with the tools. Who else swings like Lee Trevino? Anybody? Well, I mean, if he has a unique swing that isn't like the swing, he can't play, can he? I mean, if you stay with this logic, all of the people that you see that are great players that don't have the classic swing, they can't play. I'm sorry. I don't care that he shot 62 yesterday. Tom Lehman, classic swing. No. Great player. 63, 62. Those kinds of numbers you see all the time. You go, wait a minute. Whose swing? So the point is, this whole structure is logical, and so it's very attractive to responsible adults, which of course you all are. If you're a 12-year-old kid with no responsibilities at all, you don't even worry about listening to that stuff, and you go play great and shoot 71, and it's no problem, and you go, my kid plays better than I do, and I'm bigger, stronger, smarter, with more experience. What's the deal here? Well, you know, he's doing the thing with the club and the ball, and he hits it and goes. You've just tried to figure out all the swing things that are going to make all these good things happen. You have to go back, pardon me for getting back into these things again, but you have to go back to the time of Plato to find out what this philosophy is based on. See, Plato in his allegory of the cave talked about how things that are absolutely ideal or real, the only real things are the ideal notions. For instance, if we have a stool here, this stool isn't a real stool. This is a shadow of what the ideal sense of stoolness is about, you see? Okay? We can make thousands of different kinds of stools, but these would all be shadows of the real notion of stoolness. Or we can have all these swings, but they really represent this one ideal notion of the swing, you see? And so people hang on to that same sort of philosophical notion about golf swings. And so it seems that, well, Jim Furyk can play, but, you know, it's not a classic swing, and I don't know if it holds up under pressure. Excuse me? Great player. And does the classic swing of Tiger Woods ever hit bad shots? Well, I guess, and they're pretty monumental sometimes, aren't they? Okay? But it's because he's got such great speed and athletic ability. Makes a mistake sometimes, it gets big. But he golfs his ball very well. Now, if you understand then that this model, there's a golf swing, if I learn to make it perfectly, I'll hit perfect shots, isn't true, then you can sort of step away from it and embrace a different model, which I think is the only one that makes any sense, and that is there's a ball, there's a stick, and there's hand-eye coordination. There's a ball, there's a stick, there's hand-eye coordination. You get to take the ball and the stick, use your hand-eye coordination to beat the ball some direction based on how the tool's designed to be used. And if you know how it sits in your hand, it's over. Go teach yourself. We can show you how to do that, and then you can have some fun. So we have a better model. Because if this model were true, let's just assume for a minute it were true. There's a golf swing. If I learn to make it perfectly, I'll hit perfect shots. If it were true, it's like the cruelest joke in all of history, because the one thing that happens if you hit less than a perfect shot, what's your only conclusion? Something went wrong with the mechanism, right? I have to go back. What do I have to do then? I have to be a diagnostician and go back and check my swing parts and diagnose them. And the cruel joke comes in right here. The one tool, my eyes, that I could use beautifully if I could look back this way and see it, they don't give them to me. I look out this way. I can't even see myself. Ah. So, Bill, what did I do wrong there? Of course, Bill knows, right? Sure. Bill's already got his own problems. I don't know, you looked up. Oh, yeah, okay, I guess I did. I looked up. And Bill doesn't care about your game. You know that, don't you? I don't know if you're aware of that. He doesn't care. In fact, nobody does, except you, about your game, okay? That's so you gotta protect it a little better now. So you end up if you hit less than a perfect tee shot, by the time you get to the second shot, you have to have made a decision about what was wrong with that swing. So you get to the second shot and you make a decision, and maybe you hit a second shot that wasn't perfect. It could happen. It could happen. When you do that, you now have to decide, was my first diagnosis from my tee shot the right diagnosis and I just did it again, or was it the wrong diagnosis? Now, oh my Lord, what if it was the wrong thing and I worked on, and I bent something else into shape a little differently. So I get to my third shot and now I'm trying to think, okay, which one was it? Was this one? Well, oh yeah, it was that one. It had to be that one. And so then you hit a third shot, which it's possible. I know I'm stretching here. You could hit 3 shots in a row that weren't real good, okay? Once you get to the 8th tee by then, you may be so paralyzed from where you think you have to make adjustments and you have no confidence in what you're doing, and you can't draw the club back. You can't draw, I'm out of here. And sometimes, have you seen anybody on a golf course cry? I have. I absolutely have seen that. And I had a mirror when I was doing it, actually. It was one of those. So it happens. I mean, and you get so frustrated because there are no answers. Because there aren't any answers in this model. If you think about the golf swing as a bureaucracy, I think it's a good analogy, because if you're an entrepreneurial sort of a person, your job every day is to get things done. That's what you do. You get things done. You find ways. You take shortest cuts you can to get some things done, and you get things done. A bureaucracy is designed to keep you from doing things. Think about it. I mean, that's really what, isn't it? You think about it, when you look at the government, what it does as a bureaucracy, it has all these little pieces that you sort of have to go through that filters. Everything you want to get done has to pass muster at a certain place over here, and if you don't sign the bureaucratic language in there the right way, then it goes back to 4 places back, and you got to do the whole thing again, and well, that's what the golf swing is. It's a bureaucracy. If you want to hit a golf ball and you decide that you're going to filter hitting the golf ball through this incredible maze of literally thousands of connections in terms of neurons and muscles and bones and things moving and levers and stuff that's going on in the body, you'll never get out of it. There's no way out. It becomes like a sort of a maelstrom. You know, it's a whirlpool of a downward spiral, and the more you think about the golf swing, the more pieces it has. And the more you get, well, I'm really going to learn about this thing now. I'm going to learn about all the parts of the body. Oh, that'll help a lot. That was one of the things. Yeah, that was one of the things you did when you started to play ping pong, wasn't it? Let me think. If I know how this lever works here and how it connects to my shoulder, and I make my feet do this, and I turn my shoulder and make sure I do this. If you ever watched Andre Agassi play tennis, and he returns service sometimes facing the net, and he goes whack, and he hits this shot. He's not in position, is he, Craig? I mean, he's not in. He didn't get over here and then hit it. He stood here and went whack, and he hit a winner. How does that happen? So you see, as responsible adults, we do have this notion that we have to have a structure before anything can work. We forgot that we have hand-eye coordination that allows us to do the most brilliant things imaginable. The things that you do every day that you take for granted, driving a car, key punching stuff into the computer, playing the drums, playing the guitar, playing the horn, whatever it is, playing the radio. Whatever. It really takes an amazing amount of hand-eye coordination to do that, and you don't think the first thing about doing that. You don't think that's at issue at all. So let's take, there's a ball, there's a stick, there's hand-eye coordination as our model. Not, there's a golf swing. If I learn to make it perfectly, I'll hit perfect shots. This is about perfection. This is about skill development. Skill development has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with getting more times out of 20 good shots, more times out of 80, more times out of 100, getting really skillful at what you're doing. Over here, it's about perfection. If I hit less than a perfect shot, oops. And it's always less than, because you all know it isn't going to be perfect, is it? It's just not. I don't care how long you do this. So it's a wholly unrealistic model to use anyway. So over here is the model we're going to use. And in order to understand, we're going to go back now to the first day of golf. The first day. About 800 years ago in Scotland. You'll read in golf history that there were lots of games. Paganica is a game that was played by the Romans throughout the empire. It was a game where you hit a stick with a ball. But the only place they ever hit a ball into a hole this size was in Scotland, and it started about 800 plus years ago. And it started on the Lynx land, which is where they grazed the sheep. It was non-arable land, really. It was pasture because they couldn't grow crops on it. It was between the sea and that land that you could grow things on. And the grass there was perfect for grazing sheep. And so here you can imagine an old shepherd leaning on his shepherd's crook over in Scotland about 800 years ago. And he looks down on the ground and he sees a round stone. And over there he looks and he sees a rabbit hole. And he looks about and he takes his stick that he's got. You know, it's got those hooks on the end of it so they can hook the leg and get that guy back here so he can do something to him. Well, now he's got this stick. And he's going to take this stick and he's going to hit the round stone. He takes it, whacks, and he hits it into the rabbit hole. And he goes, something to do! Hoots, man! Angus! Let's have a game. You and I will take these sticks and we'll hit this round stone into the rabbit hole over there, and the one that hits in the hole in the fewest number of whacks wins the scotch for tonight. So you see, golf, gambling, and drinking came together on the first day, the very first day, and to this very day we've kept the tradition alive, haven't we? Yeah, everyone does his part, don't you? I know. Well, the interesting thing about that is the reason you have to go back that far, really, is because that really begins to tell the tale about how golf evolved, and we get to use the brilliance of hindsight. It's one of those, if I knew then what I know now, I would really have an advantage back there. So what we get to do by going back is we get to bring that line through history very quickly to today and not make those funny turnoffs that led to dead ends in teaching and learning golf. We get to keep it clearly in mind how to get where we want to be to control the ball. And so what happened was everybody understood. When Angus brought his buddy over, the two of them stood there and they whacked the ball together and knocked. Nobody misunderstood how to hit the back of the stone. And the reason it's important to go back that far is because where sheep graze, they graze it down to putting green height. They'd graze it down lower than that if you let them, but you got to move them out. And so it made a great venue for rolling a golf ball. That's what it was about. And so they had these little round stones, and I'm sure 800 years ago they decided they'd chisel a number in them, so it was probably XII. You know. I've got an XII here. So you end up with these stones that have their numbers on them or their marks, and they sort of polish them up and make them nice and round, you know, because it makes it roll nicer. And everybody understood that their job was to hit the ball and have it roll on the ground. And for the first couple of hundred years, reasonable to assume that all of golf was played on the ground because they had a shepherd's crook. That was the stick. And they had a round stone. And they whacked it along the ground, and there it went. Everybody understood it was played on the ground. Now, if I characterize a golf ball this way, the part of the ball touching the ground, for our purposes today, will be called the South Pole. Okay, that's the part touching the ground, the South Pole. The top of the ball then would be the North Pole. The equator is halfway up the ball. If I'm going to hit a stone and drive it along the ground over there for as far as I can hit it, which part of those, which one of those three will I attack? The equator. I got to hit the equator to drive it somewhere. And the neat part was everybody got it. Nobody got it wrong. Didn't need a coach, didn't need a teacher, didn't need a pro. Everybody understood, well, I know how to do that. Look at this. I take the thing and hit the backside, off it goes. Let's go. And then they hit it and walk and hit it and walk. They had a great game. It was easy. Whack it into the hole. Great game. So everything went along well, and then the drought came along. There was a drought, and it hit, and the sheep overgrazed the pasture, and there wasn't enough rain to bring the grass back, so they had to move inland to new pasture. And what happened was they got into this great area where the grass was like this long. The sheep were up to their bellies in grass and loving it, and the golfers hated it, because now the ball won't go anywhere. They're hitting it through this long grass, whack, hit it through the grass, won't go anywhere. And a void like that, or an untenable situation like that, usually creates some sort of a brilliant notion to solve the problem. And that's exactly what happened. So this one clever young Scotsman, he decides that he's going to take a second stick because he got this great notion. He decided that if I hit the ball on the equator and I hit it forward like this, the same way that I always did with my stick, but I whittled away with my wee knife an angle on the bottom, which we call loft on a golf club, a pitch on the club like this. If I whittle away that thing there on the bottom, and when I hit the equator of the ball like this, what would happen to the ball? Well, it would kick up, would it not? Every time. If I hit the equator, drive it forward, it will go up. So he figured this geometry out. Now, of course, nobody else got it at that point. They don't get it. They're not seeing it. So he shows up the next day for his shift. He's got two clubs. He's got two sticks. And of course, you know how it is with shepherds. Oh, well, I guess one stick's not good enough for you. You've got to have two then, do you? What's that one for? Well, he said, I think maybe you might be interested. Let me show you. And of course, they didn't get it. They didn't get it. And when he took the stick with this lofted surface down there, and he whacked the backside of the ball, and the ball pitched up over that long grass and just went forever, all their jaws went. And that night, he's in there sucking up the suds, and they're back home going like this, whittling away another stick. So you see, it just is this tool to this day. We have not improved the tool to the magnitude that he improved it the day he put loft on it. We have certainly made it better. We have certainly made it out of better materials. We have certainly weighted and balanced it and made it more uniform and made it more durable and made it prettier, and we've done lots of things to it. But what he did the day he put loft on it changed golf forever, forever.
The Golf Agency.